Hi dear students, welcome to Teacher at Home. Today class we are going to learn the third chapter, Poverty as a Challenge. Okay, overview. This chapter deals with one of the most difficult challenges faced by the independent India, poverty. After discussing this multi-dimensional problem through examples, the chapter discusses the way the poverty is seen in social sciences. Poverty trends in India, and the world are illustrated through the concept of the poverty line. Causes of poverty, as well as the anti-poverty measures taken by the government, are also discussed. The chapter ends with broadening the official concept of poverty into human poverty. Introduction. In our daily life, we come across many people who we think are poor. They could be landless laborers in villages or people living in the overcrowded juggies in cities. They could be daily wage workers at construction sites or child workers in dabas. They could also be beggars with children in tatters. We see poverty all around us. In fact, every fifth person in India is poor. This means roughly 270 million or 27 crore people in India live in poverty 2011-12. This also means that India has the largest single concentrations of the poor in the world. This illustrates the seriousness of the challenge. Two typically cases of poverty. Urban case. 33-year-old Ram Sharan works as a daily wage laborer in a wheat flour mill near Ranchi in Jharkhand. He manages to earn around rupees 1500 a month when he finds employment, which is not often. The money is not enough to sustain his family of six, that includes his wife and four children aged between 12 years to 6 months. He has to send money home to his old parents, who live in a village near Ramgarh. His father, a landless laborer, depends on Ramcharan, and his brother, who lives in Hazaribagh. For sustenance, Ramsaran lives in a one-room rented house in a crowded basti in the outskirts of the city. It's a contemporary shack built to bricks and clay tiles. His wife, Shanda Devi, works as a part-time maid in a few houses, manages to earn another rupees 800. They manage a meager meal of dal and rice twice a day. But that's never enough for all of them. His elder son works as a helper in the tea shop to supplement. This family income earns another 300 rupees while his 10-year-old daughter takes care of the younger siblings. None of the children go to school. They have only two pairs of hand-me down clothes each. New ones are bought only when the old ones become unwearable. Shoes are luxury. The younger kids are undernourished. They have no access to healthcare when they fall ill. Rural case. Laka Singh belongs to a small village near Meerut in Uttar Pradesh. His family does not own any land, so they do odd jobs for the big farmers. Work is erratic and so is income. At times they get paid rupees 50 for a hard day's work, but often it's in kind, like a few kilograms of wheat or dal or even vegetable for toiling in the farm through the day. The family of eight cannot always manage 2 square meals a day. Laka lives in Kuchahat on the outskirts of the village. The women of the family spend the day chopping fodder and collecting firewood in the fields. His father, a TB patient, passed away 2 years ago due to lack of medication. His mother now suffers from the same disease. Life is slowly ebbing away. Although the village has a primary school, Laka never went there. He had to start earning when he was 10 years old. New clothes happen once in a few years. Even soap and oil are a luxury for the family. Study the above cases of poverty and discuss the following issues related to poverty: landlessness, unemployment, size of families, illiteracy, poor health and malnutrition, child labor, helplessness. These two typical cases illustrate many dimensions of poverty. They show that poverty means hunger, lack of shelter. It also is a situation in which parents are not able to send their children to school, or a situation where sick people cannot afford treatment. Poverty also means lack of clean water and sanitation facilities. It also means lack of a regular job at a minimum decent level. Above all, it means living with a sense of helplessness. Poor people are in a situation in which they are ill treated at almost every place in farms, factories, government offices, hospitals, railway stations, etc. Obviously, nobody would like to live in poverty. One of the biggest challenges of independent India has been to bring millions of its people out of abject poverty. Mahatma Gandhi always insisted that India would be truly independent only when the poorest of the people become free of human suffering. Poverty as seen by social scientists. Since poverty has many facets, social scientists look at it through a variety of indicators. Usually, the indicators used relate to the levels of income and consumption. But now, poverty is looked through other social indicators like illiteracy level, lack of gender assistance due to malnutrition, lack of access to health care, lack of job opportunities, lack of access to safe drinking water, sanitation, etc. Analysis of poverty based on social exclusion, vulnerability is now becoming very common. Social exclusion. According to this concept, poverty must be seen in terms of the poor having to live only in a poor surrounding with other poor people, excluded from enjoying social equality of better off people in better surroundings. Social exclusion can be both a cause as well as the consequence of poverty in the usual sense. Broadly, it is a process through which individuals or groups are excluded from facilities, benefits, and opportunities that others enjoy. A typical example is the working of the caste system in India, in which people belonging to certain castes are excluded from equal opportunities. Social exclusion thus may lead to, but can cause more damage than having a very low income. Vulnerability. Vulnerability to poverty is a measure which describes the greater probability of certain communities, say members of the backward caste, of individuals such as the widow or the physically handicapped person, of becoming or remaining poor in the coming years. Vulnerability is determined by the options available to different communities for finding an alternative living in terms of assets, education, health, and job opportunities. Further, it is analyzed on the basis of the greater risk this group faces at the time of natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunami, terrorism, etc. Additional analysis is made of their social and economic ability to handle this risk. In fact, vulnerability describes the greater probability of being more adversely affected than other people when bad times come for everybody, whether a flood or an earthquake, or simply a fall in the availability of jobs. Poverty line. At the center of the discussion on poverty is usually the concept of the poverty line. A common method used to measure the poverty is based on the income or consumption levels. A person is considered poor if his or her income consumption level falls below a given minimum level necessary to fulfill the basic needs. What is necessary to satisfy the basic need is different at different times and in different countries. Therefore, poverty line may vary with time and place. Each country uses an imaginary line that is considered appropriate for its existing level of development and its accepted minimum social norms. For example, a person not having a car in the United States may be considered poor. In India, owning a car is still considered a luxury. While determining the poverty line in India, a minimum level of food requirement, clothing, footwear, fuel and light educational and medical requirement, etc. are determined for subsistence. These physical quantities are multiplied by their prices in rupees. The present formula of food requirement, while estimating the poverty line, is based on the desired calorie requirement. Food items such as cereal, pulses, vegetable milk, oil, sugar, etc., together provide these needed calories. The caloric needs vary depending on age, sex, and the type of work that a person does. Accepted average calorie requirement in India is 2,400 calories per person per day in rural areas and 2,100 calories per person per day in the urban areas. Since people living in rural areas engage themselves in more physical work, calorie requirements in rural areas are considered to be higher than in urban areas. The monetary expenditure per capita needed for buying this calorie requirement in terms of food grains etc. is revised periodically taking into consideration the rise in prices. On the basis of these calculations, for year 2011-12, the poverty line of a person was fixed at rupees 816 per month for rural areas and rupees 1000 for urban areas. Despite less calorie requirement, higher amount for urban areas have been fixed because of high prices of many essential products in urban centers. In this way, in the year 2011-12, a family of 5 members living in rural areas earning less than about 4,080 per month will be below the poverty line. A similar family in the urban area would need a minimum of rupees 5,000 per month to meet their basic requirements. The poverty line is estimated periodically, normally every 5 years, by conducting sample surveys. These surveys are carried out by the National Sample Survey Organization. However, for making comparisons between developing countries, many international organizations like the World Bank use a uniform standard for the poverty line minimum availability of the equivalent of $1.90 per person per day. Discuss the following. Why do different countries use different poverty lines? Why do you think would be the minimum necessary level in your locality? Poverty estimates. It is clear from table that there is a substantial decline in poverty ratios in India from about 45% in 1993-94 to 37.2% in 2004-5. The proportion of people below poverty line further came down to about 22% in 2011-12. If the trend continues, people below poverty line may come down to less than 20% in the next few years. Although the percentage of people living under poverty declined in the earlier two decades, 1973-1993, the number of the poor declined from 407 million in 2004-5 to 270 million 2011-12 with an average annual decline of 2.2 percentage points during 2004-5 to 2011-12. Estimate of poverty in India. Tendulkar methodology. Year 1993-94. It is a rural-urban total. Number of poverty ratio and number of poor in millions. 2011-12. The comparing it, the rural poverty is found to be declining, and in the urban also it is declining. Total it is given. Number of poor in rural it is declining. Urban also declining. Even if poverty ratio declined between 93 and 94 2004-5, why did the number of poor remain at about 407 million? Are the dynamics of poverty reduction the same in rural and urban India? Vulnerable groups. The proportion of people below poverty line is not same of all social groups and economic categories in India. Social groups which are most vulnerable to poverty are scheduled castes and scheduled tribe households. Similarly, among the economic groups, the most vulnerable groups are the rural agricultural labor households and the urban casual labor households. Graph shows the percentage of poor people in all these groups. Although the average of people below poverty line for all groups in India is 20 to 43 out of 100 people belonging to scheduled tribes are not able to meet their basic needs. Similarly, 34% of casual workers in urban areas are below the poverty line. About 34% of casual labor farm and 29% of scheduled castes are also poor. The double disadvantages of being a landless casual labor wage labor household is the socially disadvantaged social groups. I could not get enough money even in town. It will be difficult to send my children to school with such an irregular income. scheduled caste or scheduled tribe populations highlights the seriousness of the problem. Some recent studies have shown that except for the scheduled tribe households, all the other three groups, scheduled caste, rural agriculture laborers, and urban casual labor, have been seen a decline in poverty in the 1990s. Apart from the social group, there is also an inequality in incomes within a family. In poor families, all suffer, but some suffer more than others. In some cases, women, elderly people, and female infants are denied equal access to resources available to the family. Story of Shivaraman. Shivaraman lives in a small village near Karur town in Tamil Nadu. Karur is famous for the handloom and powerloom fabrics. There are 100 families in the village. Shivaraman, an Aryund Tadiyar cobbler by caste, now works as an agriculture laborer for rupees 160 per day. But that's only for 5 to 6 months in a year. At other times, he does odd jobs in the town. His wife, Tashigala, too works with him, but she can rarely find work these days. And even if she does, she's paid rupees 100 per day for the same work that Shivaraman does. There are 8 members in the family. Shivaraman's 65-year-old widowed mother is ill and needs to be helped with her daily chores. He has a 25-year-old unmarried sister and 4 children aged between 1 year to 60 years. 3 of them are girls, the youngest is a son. None of the girls go to school. Buying books and other things for school going girls is a luxury he cannot afford. Also, he has to get them married at some point of time, so he does not want to spend on the education now. His mother has lost interest in life and is just waiting to die someday. His sister, an elder daughter, take care of the household. Shivaraman plans to send his son to school when comes of age. His unmarried sister does not get along with his wife Shashigala, finds her a burden, but Shivaraman cannot find a suitable groom due to lack of money. Although the family has a difficulty in arranging 2 meals a day, Shivaraman manages to buy milk once in a while, but only for his son. Observe some of the poor families around you and try to find the following: which social and economic group they belong to, who are the earning members in the family, what is the condition of the old people in the family, are all the children attending schools, interstate disparitism. Poverty in India also has another aspect of dimension. The proportion of poor people is not the same in every state. Although state level poverty has witnessed a secular decline from the levels of early 17th, the success rate of reducing poverty varies from state to state. Recent estimates show while the All India head count ratio HCR was 21.9% in 2011-12, states like Madhya Pradesh, Assam, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Odisha had above All India poverty level. As the graph shows, Bihar and Odisha continue to be the two poorest states with poverty ratio 33.7 and 32.6% respectively. Along with rural poverty, urban poverty is also high in Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, and Uttar Pradesh. In comparison, there has been a significant decline in poverty in Kerala, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, and West Bengal. States like Punjab and Haryana have traditionally succeeded in reducing poverty with the help of high agricultural growth rate. Kerala has focused more on human resource development. In West Bengal, land reform measures have helped in reducing poverty. In Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, public distribution of food grains could have been responsible for the improvement. Global poverty scenario. The proportion of people in different countries living in extreme economic poverty, defined by the World Bank as living on less than $1.90 per day, has fallen from 36% in 1990 to 10% 2015, although there has been a substantial reduction in global poverty. It is marked with great regional differences. Poverty declined substantially in China and Southeast Asian countries as a result of rapid economic growth and massive investments in human resource development. Numbers of poor in China has come down from 88.3% in 1981 to 14.7% in 2008 to 0.6% in 2019. The countries of South Asia, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Bhutan, that decline has also been rapid, that is 34% in 2005 to 15.2% in 2014, with decline in the percentage of the poor. The number of poor has been declined significantly from 510.4 million to 2005 to 274.5 million in 2013. Because of different poverty line definition, poverty in India is also shown higher than the national estimates. In sub-Saharan Africa, poverty in fact declined from 51% in 2005 to 40.2% in 2018. In Latin America, the ratio of poverty has also declined from 10% in 2005 to 4% in 2018. Poverty also has resurfaced. Some of the former socialist countries like Russia, where officially it was non-existent earlier. Table shows the proportion of people living under poverty in different countries as defined by the International Poverty Line means population below $1.90 a day. The new Substantial Development Goals of the United Nations proposes ending poverty of all types by 2030. Let's discuss. Study the graph 3.4 and do the following. Identify the areas of the world where poverty ratios have declined. Identify the area of the globe which has the largest concentration of the poor. Poverty head count ratio comparison among some selected countries: Nigeria, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, China, Brazil, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka. Poverty and Equity Database World Bank data. So this is a graph that is shown share of people living in $1.90 a day, 2005 to 2019. Then causes of poverty. Causes of poverty. There were a number of causes for the widespread poverty in India. One historical reason is the low level of economic development under the British colonial administration. The policies of the colonial government ruined traditional handicraft, discouraged development of industries like textiles. The low rate of growth persisted until the 19th centuries. This resulted in less job opportunities and low growth rate of incomes. This was accompanied by a high growth rate of population. The two combined to make the growth rate per capita income is very low. The failure at both the fronts, promotion of economic growth and population control, perpetuated the cycle of poverty. With the spread of irrigation and the Green Revolution, many job opportunities were created in the agriculture sector, but the effects were limited to some parts of India. The industries, both in the public and the private sector, did provide some jobs, but these were not enough to absorb all the job seekers. Unable to find proper jobs in cities, many people started working as rickshaw pullers, vendors, construction workers, domestic servants, etc. With irregular small incomes, these people could not afford expensive housing. They started living in slums in the outskirts of the cities, and the problem of poverty, largely a rural phenomenon, also became the feature of the urban sector. Another feature of high poverty rates have been the huge income inequalities. One of the major reasons for this is the unequal distribution of land and the other resources. Despite many policies, we have been not able to tackle the issue in a meaningful manner. Major policy initiatives like land reforms, which aimed at redistribution of assets in rural areas, have not been implemented properly and effectively by most of the state governments. Since lack of land resources has been one of the major causes of poverty in India, proper implementation of policy could have improved the life of millions of rural poor. Many other socio-cultural and economic factors also are responsible for poverty. In order to fulfill social obligations and observe religious ceremonies, people in India, including the very poor, spend a lot of money. Small farmers need money to buy agricultural inputs like seeds, fertilizer, pesticides, etc. Since poor people hardly have any savings, they borrow, unable to repay because poverty, they become victims of indebtedness. So the high level of indebtedness is both the cause and effect of poverty. Anti-poverty measures. Removal of poverty has been one of the major objectives of Indian developmental strategy. The current anti-poverty strategy of the government is based broadly on two plans: promotion of economic growth, targeted anti-poverty programs. Over a period of 30 years, lasting up to early 80s, there were little per capita income growth and not much reduction in poverty. Official poverty estimates, which were about 47% in the early 1950s, remained in the same even in the early 80s. Since the 80s, India's economic growth has been one of the fastest in the world. The growth rate jumped from the average of about 3.5% a year in the 1970s to about 6% during the 1980s and 1990s. The higher growth rate have helped significantly in the reduction of poverty. Therefore, it is becoming clear that there is a strong link between economic growth and poverty reduction. Economic growth widens opportunities and provides the resources needed to invest in human development. This also encourages people to send their children, including the girl child, to schools in the hope of getting better economic returns from investing in education. However, the poor may not be able to take direct advantage from the opportunities created by economic growth. Moreover, growth in the agriculture sector is much below expectation. This has a direct bearing on poverty, as a large number of poor people live in villages and are dependent on agriculture. In these circumstances, there is a clear need for targeted anti poverty programs. Although there are so many schemes which are formulated to affect poverty directly or indirectly, some of them are worth mentioning. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005 aims to provide 100 days of wage employment to every household to ensure livelihood security in rural areas. It also aimed at sustainable development to address the cause of drought, deforestation, and soil erosion. One third of our proposed jobs have been reserved for women. The scheme provided employment to 220 crores person days of employment to 4.78 crore households. The share of SC/ST women person days in the scheme are 23%, 17%, and 53% respectively. Average wage has increased from 65 in 2006-7 to 132 2013-14. Recently, in March 2018, the wage rate for unskilled manual workers has been revised. State-wise, the range of wage rate for different states and union territories lie in between rupees 281 per day for the workers in Haryana, rupees 168 per day for the workers in Bihar and Jharkhand. Prime Minister Roskar Yojana (PMRY) is another scheme which has started in 1993. Aim of the program is to create self-employment opportunities for educated, unemployed youth in rural areas and small towns. They helped in setting up small business and industries. Rural Employment Generation Program was launched in 1995. Aim of the program is to create self-employment opportunities in rural areas and small towns. A target for creating 25 lakh new jobs have been set up for the program under the 10th five-year plan. Swarna Jayanti Gram Saroskar Yojana (SGSY) was launched in 1999. The program aims at bringing the assisted poor families above the poverty line by organizing them into the self-help groups through a mix of bank credit and government subsidy. Under the Pradhan Mantri Gramodaya Yojana (PMGY) launched in 2000, additional central assistance is given to states for basic services such as primary health primary education, rural shelter, rural drinking water, and rural electrification. And the important scheme is Antyodaya Anna Yojana, AIY, about which you will be reading more in the next chapter. The results of the programs have been mixed. One of the major reasons for less effectiveness is the lack of proper implementation and right targeting. Moreover, there has been a lot of overlapping of schemes. Despite good intentions, the benefits of the schemes are not fully reached to the deserving poor. Therefore, the major emphasis in recent years is on proper monitoring of all the poverty alleviation programs. Challenges ahead. Poverty has certainly declined in India, but despite the progress, poverty reduction remains India's most compelling challenge. Wide disparities in poverty visible between rural and urban areas and among different states. Certain social and economic groups are more vulnerable to poverty. Poverty reduction is expected to make better progress in the next 10 to 15 years. This would be possible mainly due to high economic growth, increasing stress, or universal free elementary education, declining population growth, increasing empowerment of the women and the economically weaker sections of the society. The official definition of poverty, however, captures only a limited part of what poverty really means to people. It is about a minimum subsistence level of living rather than a reasonable level of living. Many scholars advocate that we must broaden the concept into human poverty. Large number of people may have been able to feed themselves, but do they have education or shelter or health care or job security or self confidence? Are they free from caste and gender discrimination? Is the practice of child labor still common? Worldwide experience shows that with development, the definition of what constitutes poverty also changes. Eradication of poverty is always a moving target. Hopefully, we will be able to provide the minimum necessary in terms of only income to all people by the end of the next decade. But the target will move on for many of the bigger challenges that still remain. Providing health care, education, and job security for all, and achieving gender equality and dignity for the poor. This will be even bigger task. Next is about the summary. You have seen in this chapter that poverty has many dimensions. Normally, this is measured through the concept of poverty line. Through this concept, we analyzed many global and national trends in poverty. But in recent years, analysis of poverty is becoming rich through a variety of new concepts like social exclusion. Similarly, the challenge is becoming bigger as scholars are broadening the concept into human poverty. So that's all about this chapter. If you are interested, please do like, share, and subscribe my channel. Okay, thank you.